Welcome to the CFL three-down breakdown for week number 10 in the Canadian Football League. I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review. My partner, my colleague Andrew McInnes, under the weather, sick in August. That's tough. That really blows. There's no way to sugarcoat that. It's bad being sick, but even worse in the summertime when the weather's nice. So we hope Andrew gets back to us quickly. Speedy recovery. I'm sure he'll be back ready to go next week. But we've got week 10 to break down here in the CFL. And I'll tell you what, it has been a very good season from a best bets perspective here on the show, on the three-down breakdown. We cashed in with BC plus the 4.5 last week as they snuck out a point spread cover in a 4-point loss to Calgary last week. That makes us now 7-2, 78% now with best bets on the show for me this season in the CFL as we head into week 10. See if we can keep that nice run going here this week. Once again, it's an interesting card to break down for week 10. Subplots, we no longer have any more undefeated teams in the CFL. The Edmonton Eskimos suffered their first loss of the season last week against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We'll get into them. They're playing on Friday night this week. So lots to get into. Let's start with the Thursday game, August 24th, to kick off week number 10. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Montreal Alouettes in a West versus East matchup. Winnipeg, a very short road favorite, about one pretty much across the board. One is the consensus number with Winnipeg as a road favorite in that game. The Greek is showing a -2. 5 dimes, pick them with some juice. So there's a little bit of variance, a little bit of different numbers in different places. So make sure whatever side you like in this game, you want to make sure that you look for the best of the number. Teddy covers, I know for a fact, he hammers it home every time on Sportsbet. You got to have more than one sports book. It's ridiculous to me if you don't. You've got to be able to set yourself up with the possibility of getting the best number possible with whatever side, whatever total you're looking at. And that is the same here in the CFL. But the consensus right now, Winnipeg -1, total in this game about 50.5, pretty much across the board. Or no, 54.5, sorry. Pretty much across the board here in this football game. This is an interesting game to talk about because we've got a situation here where, remember the last time these two teams played each other, Blue Bombers and the Alouettes, it was a finish for the ages. Montreal was, I think, hands down the better team a few weeks ago against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for about, for 58 minutes of that game. And then the last 2 minutes was the mother of all, I guess, collapses from a Montreal Alouettes perspective, mother of all comebacks from a Winnipeg Blue Bombers perspective. I mean, Montreal had a 12-point lead with less than 2 minutes to go. And for some reason, and teams still do this, and it drives me nuts that they just do this all the time. Let's go prevent defense. Let's give the team, the opposing offense, 20-yard chunk plays at a time. Bing, bang, boom, down the field. Make it so easy on them to score a touchdown. The aggressiveness is gone. The corners, play soft on the receivers. The pass rush is non-existent. It is that passive defense. And to me, it gets you absolutely nowhere. Nowhere, even with a 12-point lead with less than 2 minutes to go. That's not the way you defend a lead. You're supposed to play all out, play aggressive for 60 minutes. That's what I would do if I'm a coach. And unfortunately, there are certain teams and coaches that just will not get it. It won't sink in that this is going to burn you sometimes. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes the other team isn't going to be able to make plays when you're sitting back in a passive type of defense with a big lead with a couple minutes to go. But there are a lot of times I notice that you do get burned by it. And the Montreal Alouettes got burned by it when they played in Winnipeg just a few weeks ago. Way too easy, and not just way too easy for Winnipeg to get that first touchdown, which cut the lead to 6, way too quickly. I think it only took Winnipeg 45 seconds off the game clock for them to punch in that touchdown to make it a one-score game. It was just way too quick. It left Winnipeg way too much time had they recovered the onside kick, and of course they end up recovering the onside kick. That's what gives Winnipeg that chance down one possession to go ahead with that game-winning touchdown, and they still had a minute or so left on the clock. They still had way too much time. That is going to break your back more often than coaches and teams think. Playing that kind of very passive, non-aggressive defense. Like all of a sudden, nobody rushes the quarterback. 12-point lead with 2 minutes to go. You're taught, let's be aggressive. Let's get after the quarterback. All of a sudden, you don't do that with 12, just because you got a 12-point lead with 2 minutes to go. Football is one of those games now, especially now that it's pass happy in not only the CFL, but you look at NFL and college football, pass happy leagues now. You've got to be aggressive still, through right to the final gun, right to the final seconds of the football game. You can't take anything for granted. And unfortunately, for the Montreal Alouettes that night in Winnipeg a few weeks ago, they did take it for granted. They thought the game was over, 12-point lead with 2 minutes to go. Oh, we're not going to blow this game. We can just, sit back and soft coverage and get the job done. No. It didn't work that way. Didn't work that way because you're playing a very, very explosive and very, very talented Winnipeg offense that was able to make Montreal pay. So unexplainable, inexplicable loss for the Montreal Alouettes against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers a few weeks ago in that 41-40 defeat when they had that game totally in the bag for the last couple of minutes of that football game. So that basically brings us to a situation here where we have revenge. But revenge to me is overrated. Revenge to me doesn't mean a thing. Doesn't mean a tinker's dam in a lot of situations. But when the Montreal Alouettes lose the game to Winnipeg in the fashion that they did a few weeks ago, up 12, 2 minutes to go, had the Winnipeg Blue Bombers pretty much dead to frickin' rights, and you lose that game. You're going to come with an extra chip on your shoulder here for this rematch if you're the Montreal Alouettes. You're going to remember a crushing, a soul-crushing, heartbreaking, gut-wrenching loss like that. You're going to remember it, and you're going to go into this week with an extra little chip on your shoulder, an extra little sense of purpose. That's the case for Montreal here, and Montreal's coming off their own stinker last week here against the Toronto Argonauts. That was almost a no-show for Montreal. It's very similar. You know what's weird? That was a home-and-home series, Toronto-Montreal. Montreal takes care of business against Toronto at home last week. They returned to Toronto this past weekend. And Montreal doesn't show up after they beat Toronto the week before. It's the same damn thing BC did. BC beat Saskatchewan at home, and then BC travels to Saskatchewan to play them again the following week, and they don't show up to play. That's exactly what we saw from the Montreal Alouettes on Sunday when they lost to on Saturday when they lost to the Toronto Argonauts 38-6, outgained by 310 yards. How does that happen? How do you get outgained by 310 yards, especially the way Montreal have been playing? I was talking about it last week. Montreal was the only team in the East seemingly playing better and getting better by the week, but they just did everything wrong. I mean, they didn't move the ball on offense very well. Look at the first downs, 29-9 for Toronto. Look at the total net yards, 473 to 163 in favor of Toronto. Turnovers absolutely killed the Montreal Alouettes. They turned the ball over way too much. Not very good. They didn't get any sort of ground game going, and they were down quickly. Special teams plays, Toronto had a few of those, and that game was 28-0, or 35-0 at halftime, and then Toronto put it on cruise control from that time. So you got Montreal off a terrible loss like that. You're going to get a better effort from them facing a team that they should have beat the first time. That's the case for Montreal. However, the case for Winnipeg is East teams don't beat West teams. Not this year, not last year, not 2 years ago, not ever, it seems, not in recent CFL history. The West dominance over the East is insane, guys. It really, really is. I mean, going into last week, and we had all East versus East, West versus West last week, so there were no games with interdivision matchups. But going into this week now, I've got the West at 17-2-1 straight up this season against the East in head-to-head games. West team 17-2-1 straight up head-to-head against the East this season. So that makes it very difficult, in a price range where the winner's going to cover the number here. I mean, let's be honest, it's a near pick 'em. If you're going to win the game, you're going to cover the number in this football game. That makes it tough to make a case for Montreal. I like the spot. I like this is not your average revenge spot. This is a spot where revenge actually means something, just because of the way Montreal lost to Winnipeg on the road a few weeks ago. This is a meaningful revenge spot. But Winnipeg Blue Bombers, let's give them their due. Let's give them their due. They're playing some very good football right now. Matt Nichols and this offense were playing great. They're getting the job done in terms of receivers. Absolutely outstanding job as far as I'm concerned by this team on the offensive side of the ball. Matt Nichols had another good game last week against Edmonton, 33-26. They're now on 4 straight games, 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread during that time. The Montreal home win, road win at Ottawa, road win at Hamilton, and then handing the Edmonton Eskimos their first loss of the season last week, 33-26. It's a tough team to bet against right now. All the Bombers need is a little bit of defense because that was their Achilles heel early in the season. They were really giving up chunk plays. They were not stopping the run. They were not playing good enough at times in the secondary outside of TJ Heath. But the good news for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is they have played better on that side of the ball. And they could be getting linebacker Ian Wild back. Ian Wild's been out for a few weeks now. He's had that arm injury. They've missed him. A big component of that defense. Not only a good player in the linebacking core for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but also a guy that's a leader. You look at him for leadership traits for this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team. They might get him back for this game. That's an injury you're going to want to keep an eye on. So that would be a big boost to this Winnipeg defense. A Winnipeg defense that, as I've said, last couple weeks they've played better. No question about that. 38 points combined that they allowed in the last 2 games against Hamilton and Edmonton combined. Hey, you got to give them credit. Edmonton was undefeated. They were surviving through injuries, and Winnipeg was finally the team able to beat them last week. It's tough. I mean, I was looking to make a case for Montreal, but at the same point in time, I thought Montreal would be maybe catching a full field goal at home. I had +3 in mind with Montreal. +1, I don't know if I want to get involved with the Alouettes side. Part of me thinks this game could get up and over the total. I didn't like the way the Montreal defense got absolutely carved up by Ricky Ray and the Argos last week. That was not good whatsoever. They gave up almost 400 yards of passing through the air to Ricky Ray and the Argos. And you can argue that Winnipeg's passing game is even more explosive and dangerous than Toronto's. So I think over the total would be an early lean here, 54.5, the current number there. Sidewise, I think it's a good spot for Montreal, but I'm just not getting the number I was hoping for, so I'm going to leave that alone. Friday, let's go to that game. Saskatchewan Roughriders, Edmonton Eskimos. We've got Edmonton, a 6.5-point home favorite. That's pretty much the consensus line right now. We've got a total of 53.5 at Chris, 54 in a few spots, even a 54.5 at the Greek. So again, you're seeing again with these CFL lines, you're getting different numbers in different sports books. So again, very important that you look for the best of the number, wherever you're shopping. There's no question about that. That's very important. Saskatchewan off a bye. That's the good news for them. And they had one of their best, probably their best game of the season. No doubts about it, actually. It was their best game of the season. And they absolutely piss-pumped the BC Lions before the bye week. They had a tremendous game on their part. No question about that. Saskatchewan finally, just absolutely drilled the BC Lions in that game. But again, we've talked about it multiple shows here on the 3-Down Breakdown about this Saskatchewan team. They're 3-4 on the season, including 3-1 straight up at home. But you get this team away from the cozy confines of Mosaic Stadium, they've been a completely different football team. They have yet really to put together a really good road performance this season. Really, they haven't. I mean, Montreal, they were in the game, but again, the offense sputtered when they lost 17-16 way back in week 1. Seems like a long time ago. It was 2 months ago. That's how quickly the season's gone. At Calgary, they lost by 17, 27-10, and then at BC, they lose 30-15, and that game was 30-0. Saskatchewan put up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter in garbage time when the game was already out of reach. So in terms of on the road, this team hasn't been good. Winless on the road. They only covered 1-point spread on the road. The good news is they're catching a bunch of points here, but still they're catching 6.5 on the road here against Edmonton. And let's see what the Edmonton Eskimos are about here. Saskatchewan hasn't played well on the road, haven't won yet on the road, but Edmonton coming off that first loss of the season last week against Winnipeg. I like to bet when it's a long winning streak, baseball, hockey, football, any sport really. Long winning streak gets snapped. The next game after that winning streak gets snapped, I like to bet against that team. And I'm looking for reasons to bet against Edmonton here. Not only because they lost their first game of the season, the disappointment sets in that, oh, geez, damn it, lost our first game. Fuck. And they're probably just thinking that to themselves. Just, geez, we thought we could ride this undefeated run out a lot longer. Didn't happen. So we'll see how they are able to rebound from that mentally. This is a mental hurdle for the Edmonton Eskimos. When you start a season 7-0, you finally lose that first game. You're able to bounce back from it. We'll see if they're able to do that here against Saskatchewan. Mike Riley, give him credit. He has played fantastic football at quarterback despite a bunch of injuries that this Edmonton team has suffered. But the injuries are piling up at an alarming rate for Edmonton. There was a time where it seemed like every play that was run in the game against Winnipeg last week, there was another Eskimo getting hurt and leaving the football field due to an injury. I mean, it is getting ridiculous right now, the number of injuries on this Edmonton team. Look at the guys that are out. Gary Peters, cornerback, Vidal Hazelton, wide receiver, Brandon Zylstra, wide receiver, Corey Jones, a great linebacker, Phillip Hunt, Marcus Howard still out, Simeon Rotier on the offensive line is out, Neil King is out, J.C. Sherritt out for the season, Corey Greenwood, another good linebacker, out for the season, Darius Bowman, a great receiver, has been out for a while, Sean White, their kicker's out, Trayvon Van, their top running back, is out. Like I said, Marcus Howard along the defensive front is out, Armando Sewell and Marcus Howard are their top two D linemen. They both may not play in this game, along with all those other people that are in that Eskimo injury infirmary. This is not a team I'm looking to lay 6.5 with all these injuries. Coming off the first loss of the season, is it a bubble burst theory? You're a little flat in this game playing Saskatchewan off that first loss of the season. That's a very big concern for me with laying nearly a touchdown here with the Edmonton Eskimos in this game. But if you're going to take Saskatchewan on the road, it's also a little bit of a leap of faith right now. There's no question about it. No question whatsoever. Going to be one of those situations where I'm going to do some reading. I want to find out a little more of this Eskimos injury situation. This game is Friday. It's still a little muddled, still a little unclear, a little hazy, just how it's going to shake out from an injury perspective with the Edmonton Eskimos for this game. I can guarantee I won't be laying the points with Edmonton. There's too many injuries. They suffered even more injuries last week. They fought the great fight to get to 7-0 with all the injuries. It caught up to them finally last week. As the bubble burst theory that, hey, our first loss of the season finally, are we going to be mentally sharp for this game? That I'm not sure they will be after first loss, snap 7-game win streak to start the season. So it's Saskatchewan or pass for me. The question is, do I want to back Saskatchewan on the road? The good news is Saskatchewan doesn't have to win this game. They're 0-3 straight up on the road. But they don't have to win this game to cover the number. They're getting 6.5, almost a full touchdown in this game. So I would definitely lean a little bit to Saskatchewan. We'll see, though, again, as the week progresses, how things shake out with the Edmonton injury situation. But it's clearly catching up to them. It has to. It has to. When you've got, looks like 20 players, 20 freaking players on the injured list for your team, it's going to catch up to you at some point. And it looks like it's finally catching up to Edmonton with all of these injuries that have besieged them through 9 weeks of the season. Let's go to the Saturday doubleheader. August 26th, BC Lions, Ottawa Red Blacks in this game. We've got Ottawa, a 1.5 consensus number home favorite, total of 55. Give Ottawa credit. They finally won a game last week, but they did it against the hapless, pathetic, really a true embarrassment right now. The Hamilton Ticats still winless on the season. Ottawa was able to take care of business against Hamilton last week on the road. Let's see if they can do it here against the BC Lions, a West team. Again, we've got a West versus East matchup here. We talked about it. West is 17-2-1 straight up against the East, and yet here we go. The East team is favored over the West team. Now, I know BC's lost 2 in a row and haven't looked good on offense in either game. Jonathan Jennings has been back for 2 straight games at quarterback. The dual threat, we're waiting for him to really show the kind of quarterback, or at least I'm waiting. I don't know about you guys. I'm waiting for him to show what kind of quarterback he is. He struggled. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no sugarcoating it. There's no putting lipstick on this pig right now in terms of Jonathan Jennings and his performance in 2 games for BC. We cashed with BC plus 4.5 last week when they lost to Calgary 21-17 because of the defense, because they dug in. The offense didn't do enough. It was a struggle for Jonathan Jennings. And that's carryover from the Saskatchewan game. They've now scored just 25 points, BC, in their last 2 games combined against Saskatchewan and Calgary. This offense, a little bit of a concern. We're waiting for Jennings. We know Jennings is a better quarterback than he has shown in the last 2 games. Question is it going to be one of those situations where we get that kind of performance here from the BC Lions on offense? A better performance is what we need from them here. Jonathan Jennings, this will be now his 3rd game back since returning from injury. Excuses are gone. It's time to step up. It's time to stop overthrowing guys. It's time to stop skipping balls into the dirt. This isn't Pee Wee Pop Warner football. It's a professional league. I know it's not the NFL, which is the #1 pro league in the world. I get that. I understand that. This is the CFL. You should be able to make better throws than that. We'll see if Jonathan Jennings can do that here this week. BC shored up their defense last week. Very good. I was impressed with the BC defense last week. We know Bo Levi Mitchell and that Calgary offense can be tough to stop, but they played well. I just don't trust Ottawa as a favorite here. I know BC's now lost 2 games in a row. It's a troubling thing for them, but BC went 2-0 straight up, 2-0 against the spread against Ottawa last year. They won in Ottawa 29-23, won at home against Ottawa 40-33. I know Ottawa got that 2nd win of the season, and everyone's saying, oh, turning point. Now is a chance for them to go on a winning streak. Oh, hold on now. They beat 0-8 Hamilton, all right? 0-8 Hamilton. Well, calm down, will you please? Just put the pom-poms down, all right? Beat someone good before you go crazy about that kind of victory. Come on. Hamilton, 0-8. You're going nuts now that your season's back on track with that win? You have to be kidding me. I mean, you really can't be serious about that. And yet I hear Ottawa just going absolutely crazy about how, now they can get this season back on the tracks. How about you beat BC at home this weekend? A West team, I know they're 5-4. They're 4th place West team. The 4th place West team is still better than Ottawa's record. So we'll see if Ottawa can get on this run. I think we'll be getting back to this game for best bet at the end of the show. And I think you already know where I'm going here. BC, by the way, I should leave you with this nugget in terms of playing the East, the weaker division, the teams from the weaker division. How has BC done? Well, all they are is 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread in the East, against the East this season, are the BC Lions, winning at Toronto, at Montreal, and at Hamilton. And yet they're dogs here. You put 2 and 2 together. I think you know where I'm going, but we'll get back to this game for best bet. Let's wrap up our Week 10 breakdown with the last game on the slate on Saturday. It's the 2nd game of the doubleheader. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Good luck getting ratings for this game. Toronto Argonauts, Calgary Stampeders. You're going head-to-head with Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, the big boxing match. That's not a good sign for this game. It's going to be tough to get eyeballs to the set on TSN, I think, on a Saturday night going up against that fight. But Toronto and Calgary 10-point home favorite, total of 54.5, 55. If Calgary's offense is anything like it was last week against BC, that's a tough number to lay with them. I know they're a very good football team, no question about that. But Toronto, you're going to be laying a premium, paying a premium with the Calgary Stampeders on their home field. That's just all there is to it. I mean, it's been that way. It was that way late last season. It's going to be that way again this year, it looks like. I mean, you look at Calgary at home, they laid 13 against Hamilton. They laid 10 against Saskatchewan. They're laying 10 here against Toronto. They did cover, though. The last 2 times they've been double-digit home favorites. 10-point home favorite against Saskatchewan. They won by 17. And then, of course, 13-point home favorite against Hamilton, and that was that ridiculous 60-1 blowout win they had against the Hamilton Ticats, the hapless Ticats. They're going to be playing a Toronto team that was really reeling going into last week. 3 straight losses to Saskatchewan, Calgary, and Montreal, all by double digits. But they got Ricky Ray back on the field. He returned from injury. And that team just took off on offense. That was a tremendous performance by Ricky Ray, as good as I've seen. And I got to give the Toronto defense credit. This is a banged-up Toronto defense. Jermaine Gabriel's out in the secondary. Johnny Sears Jr.'s out in the secondary due to injury. They've been without Cleon Lang and Victor Butler, 2 of, if not their 2 top pass rushers along the defensive front. Kenny Bishop's also been out. And yet they absolutely just completely put the blanket on that Montreal Alouettes offense, and Darian Durant weren't able to get anything going in that football game, and they rolled to a 38-6 victory against the Montreal Alouettes. We'll see if they can take some momentum with them into Calgary here for this game, but it's been a one-sided series. There's no question. It's been hard, tough sledding for the Toronto Argonauts. You look at the last 3 meetings since the start of last season between these two teams. 48-20 Calgary, 31-13 Calgary, 41-24 Calgary earlier this season. All one-sided, all in favor of the Stampeders. Tough. And Bo Levi Mitchell and the Stampeders, you think they're happy about a big win against BC last week, 21-17 on the road. Think again. Everybody's talking about, we were sloppy. We were not sharp. We were very, very poor in our execution. This is a team that won the game on the road against a good BC team, 21-17, and they're not happy about it. So that tells you that Calgary, you can't expect them necessarily to be flat, even though they're going outside the division to play this Toronto team. So we'll see what ends up going here in this particular football game. But it's one of those situations where, the recent series history between these two teams, Toronto and Calgary, it's been all Calgary, and it makes it hard to endorse Toronto here in this game. And I'm just not sure that one win against Montreal, as impressive as it was, and it was a beatdown on Montreal, is it enough to prove to me Toronto's back on track, ready to get on a run again, especially still dealing with injuries in the secondary, still dealing with injuries on the defensive front? That's going to be not as easy to survive those kind of injuries against Calgary's offense as opposed to Montreal's. So probably going to lay off the side in this game. I would lean over the total, 54.5, 55. Toronto's offense did look good last week. I think Calgary's offense is going to take advantage maybe of some of those Toronto defensive injuries. So my lean here would probably be looking up and over the total in this game. And that brings us to the end of the show, which means it's best bet time for Week 10. Let's wrap it up with the best bet. We're going back to the BC-Ottawa game. Look, BC's lost 2 in a row. I really can't remember the last time they've lost 3 in a row. I mean, did they do that at all last season? I'm not sure. I don't believe they did lose 3 games in a row at any time. This is something they'll be looking to avoid here. Ottawa with their second win of the season, but they're favored at home against a West team. The West is 17-2-1 straight up. 17-2-1 straight up in 20 games head-to-head against the East, and yet the West team is the dog here. I don't buy that. Let's go ahead. Let's make it official. Best number I see is Chris with this game, bookmaker/Chris. You can get +2 on the BC Lions at -115. That's what we're going to use for best bet Week 10. Again, 7-2 with best bets in the CFL this season. See if we can make it 8-2. I'm going to take the BC Lions +2, rotation number 375 on Saturday, August 26th, 3:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Let's take BC +2. I think the wrong team's favored in that game. Ottawa beating Hamilton doesn't tell me they're back on track. They want to show me they're back on track, this Red Blacks team, and can get on a run, beat a pretty good BC team. Then we'll see. Then maybe I'm willing to change my mind. But until then, I think BC's still the better team from the better division. As an underdog, sign me up. BC +2, best bet for Week 10 in the CFL. That's going to wrap up the 3-down breakdown for week number 10. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Really do appreciate that. We want to grow the show. We want to keep it strong for the second half of the CFL season. We got a lot of great football content, CFL, NFL, and college coming up this year at Sportsbook Review. Enjoy Week 10 action. I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review. We'll be back next week to look at Week 11. Enjoy the games and good luck.